At this time, we're going to have a conversation with the General Secretary of CTUSAB, Dennis Peiza, and we're going to be discussing the social impact that labor has endured, especially as a direct result of COVID. Mr. Peiza, how are you?
Fine, thank you very much. And you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking time with us today. Now, why don't you start by letting us know, first of all, how important labor is as an input to manufacturing? I know it sounds like an obvious question, but I feel like it needs to be laid out.
Oh, well, that question really is really one that sets the stage for us to look at the state, in my view, of what manufacturing is all about. And one would recognize and accept that manufacturing plays a key role in the economy of Barbados. And it's driven by a few things. And that would be the investment that we need to have, whether land or equipment. You need that capital, and clearly you need labor. And because I'm aware that it's labor intensive, and that it also contributes to a number of other sectors of the economy, because manufacturing doesn't stand on its own. Because if you manufacture, you have to have those who are other fields of endeavor who will bring inputs into the sector, and then you have to look at the other elements that help to build out the sector in relation to the marketing component, the packaging. You have to look at the transportation. All of those are areas where the human resource is going to be needed. So manufacturing as a key component helps us to develop in some area of high level of production and to create hopefully some niche marketing. But it also helps us to build out a platform of how we absorb labor. And if I look at some statistics that I was able to address back in 2007, my understanding is that there were 358 manufacturing companies on the island. And at that time, they were employing as little as 9,317 persons. In 2019, strangely enough, industry, which I believe included manufacturing, only accounted for 18.3% of employment. And this is when you compare it to the service sector, that was 78.42, with agriculture at the bottom with 2.65%. Now clearly, it would seem that industry or manufacturing in that regard has a part to play. Though at this time, it would seem that it is not playing the significant role that you would expect it to play, because it goes back as far as 1980s when there was an economic recession, and 1/3 of the jobs in the manufacturing sector were lost at that time, and that decline has continued. And I am not in a position to speak to the overall output from the manufacturing sector in terms of the dollars of income that it generates, but certainly if we are going on observation, it would appear that we are not where we want to be at this time, and that is really going to have a real impact on employment levels, the sustainment of employment, and as I say, the bottom line is to how do we play a significant role in the overall economy of Barbados.
Would you be in a position at this time then to speak to how adversely COVID would have affected the unemployment levels then within manufacturing?
Well, certainly. As you would appreciate, that we have gone into an area where there are reduced hours of work, for example. And if you're reducing hours of work, that can have serious implications for the overall output, because are we going to be able to sustain the same level of output that we require? This would, of course, with the overall inability of us to meet our demands on whatever markets that we have. Plus, at the same time, if there's less purchasing power or spending power, then are we able to either produce and at the same time maximize our returns based on sales? So there are going to be some issues. Now, the downtime is going to be a big question, and that is going to create a level of social fallout, because the take-home pay of persons is going to be reduced. If you're going to be moving to the point because of the fact that you're not generating enough revenue, are you going to be able to sustain your operations, and will it lead to a reduction in the number of your staff complement? which means if that happens, then we're going to go into the area of layoffs, not necessarily retrenchment, but that all of that creates a new set of problems for us. Now, some will speak to the issue of home working. I would like to think that that is not something that one would seriously consider in the manufacturing sector, unless you are dealing with some areas of activity that could be done remotely, and even those I believe would be very, very few. So if that were to be a problem, then that will contribute even further to the issue of how productive we are. Because I believe in the sector, you demand a more chain approach to your operations. And as we see now, there are other things that are creating problems for us in the COVID environment, where the inputs, take, for example, the idea of fuel. The prices are going up. This is going to make a difference to your operational costs. And then you have to look at how do you reconcile all of this against the bottom line. So there are going to be some serious issues that will emerge out of the COVID arrangement. And even when we look at the fact that at this time we're having an upsurge in the country, and if staff were to be impacted, then that is going to have an impact on the operation. And again, manufacturing is going to find itself in a real stalemate. The problem that I am concerned about, that a lot of our manufacturing seems to be limited to what we call light industries. And if we are into light industries, how competitive are we in the Caribbean community or on the international market?
Give us an example of a light industry.
Well, I mean, take for what something we call cotton industries. But we have a lot of people who are bottling stuff. Now, we only recently I heard somebody bottling a vodka made from some other material outside the standard here in Barbados. Now, even if you were to put that on the market, how much traction would that get at this time? Because you're going to talk about being able to market something and to be able to do such a way that it can find itself as a seller to compete with the international brands. If we speak to, like, we talk about our jams and we talk about pepper sauce and so forth, most of that is consumed locally. Yes, there are possibilities for us to compete with it on the market, particularly where the diaspora will be located across Europe and United States and so forth. But how much of that is done? We hear about some, you see some on shelves, but yet most Barbadians who return home buy those things in bulk to carry, which means, is there access to the product? So you might have it, you might be exporting quantities, but where are the locations that you're having that product? But are you only going to create a product that your members of your diaspora would want to consume? Are you not going to try to attract the other communities within those jurisdictions so that they have acquire a taste for the type of product that you have? Why do we have to import in large quantities all of the foreign jam, jellies, grapes? But some of those products may not be able to grow in here. But why, in like manner, can we take some of the products that are grown here and find a way to export them and try to cash in on the taste of the persons in those jurisdictions? So we have to do some serious work, serious introspection at our own thoughts of what manufacturing means to us. If we're going to limit ourselves to building furniture, if we're going to limit ourselves to probably doing wrought iron railings, or if we can limit ourselves to selling biscuits, no, we have to go beyond that. We have to think outside the box and to look for areas that we believe that the international market is willing to consume.
So what is the social conversation then that you think needs to be had to help move manufacturing forward?
By and large, we have to begin to think differently, as I said. Firstly, how do we get young people to be involved in the industry? Now, or in this sector overall. Now, somehow I say we continue to look at the traditional ways. We are talking about, let's say, the idea of food security. For so long, we speak about it, but we don't seem to take decisive action to make it happen. Why it is that Trinidad and Tobago can have a canning industry where we consume all types of product from Trinidad and Tobago? Why can't we do the same here? Why can't we look to develop our agricultural sector to the point that we go into canning industries? We got so many different things that we grow. And if we concentrate on the growing, and even going beyond that, as a Caribbean community, we have to sit down and look at the region as a breadbasket. What it is that you produce, how can we combine or we can create in an area of a niche so that we can then be competitive on the international stage and get young people to buy into this. Look, we do a lot of training in Barbados. We take a number of young persons and we send them to the Samuel Jackman Institute of Technology. We have a lot of we import a lot of car parts. But what is it saying that we can get young people to set up industries where we refurbish and create a market for some areas, whether they're ball joints. There are several areas. I am no expert in this field, but there are things that can be done. We turn around and we speak, like for years we've been speaking to the area. We have fish offal and all types of other things that we do. We have one company that does pet food, but there are a variety of pet foods that can be produced here locally, rather than going to the stores and see all these range of look good, exotic in the back packaging and cost a lot. But we can take what we dump in the waste in the sea or wherever and convert it into a product that we can be selling and making use. We into recycling. What is happening that we cannot look for things in the market that we know that can be recycled and set up industries that we can generate business. We have to be more proactive. We have to be more thoughtful about what it is we want to do. We have to do some serious planning. But what I want to say about all this, manufacturing in Barbados is dependent on how it is driven, incentive driven. Young persons will not be able to develop unless they have a resource base. Government and other institutions have to be committed to working with them. You can't give them $5,000 and expect that they're going to build a business with that. Well, they may be able to do registration fee and not even buy a piece of equipment because of the expensive nature of equipment. We have got to begin to do some cooperative ventures. We have got to move to that stage where we bring people of like mind, sit down and look at a funding model for them, put some money behind them, instead of what we have today, unfortunately, where a small business seeks to develop, and before you can cat lick its ears, it is gone. But you see a big business doing the same thing, which means that the small man, we call them entrepreneurs, we call them all types of things, has not been given an opportunity, a fair opportunity, to take that and run with it. And if we really are serious, like we did with the land lease project, which seems to me, forgive me, it hasn't gone anywhere too far, but we need to look at that and decide that we want to put X amount of acres of land under X production. For what purpose? Because we're going to set up a canning industry in a particular product and start serious and aggressive to pursue those things. So these initiatives will help to create opportunities for work, because somebody on bodies, you have employment creation, and it will have a multiplying effect. And we then will be able to see the benefits in the long term, because agriculture will develop, manufacturing will obviously take a new twist, and by that, we have the offshoot, they said, the marketing, the promotion, all those things that will be part of a manufacturing or any business sector will evolve and take on a new phase. And that's important for us in the Development Trust.
So a twofold question now. Have you seen any short-term and or long-term policy responses to COVID that give you any kind of confidence that manufacturing has been taken into consideration and would help move along the trajectory that you've been speaking about?
As I said earlier, we have been widely speaking to the fact of a few things when we speak about the protocols that are associated with COVID-19. These, to my mind, cannot and will not work for manufacturing. I don't see people working in industry having to maintain the social distancing in the way that it's being promoted. Yes, mask wearing is always a feature, but sanitizing, yes, but when you talk about that, but where I would even want to go further, why I'm saying that, in manufacturing, as you would appreciate, there is a level of work that has to be done concentrated within a plant. And most plants, for some reason, if maybe the environmental nature of them would have certain conditions that might give rise to the spread of COVID. Yes, I think that what we have to ensure that we continue to have our environment conducive to work, and therefore employers will have to take a greater responsibility for the whole of managing the COVID restrictions and for ensuring the plants are kept in a way that the ventilation is good. But outside of that, I have not seen any inducements for manufacturing, because as we are saying, a lot of what is happening now is driven by the state of the economy. Now, manufacturing, like anything else, is a risk. Business is a risk. And the idea of access to capital is important. Banks, yes, may say, hey, yeah, we have money to borrow, but you know what? Persons have to have some what we call backing. And if the powers that be are not providing that type of support, whatever it is, for persons to be able to invest in this business, my concern is that it is nothing that will induce Barbadians. What it will do, if we set up and we found a way to encourage foreign investors, that may more likely to happen. But what is going to happen is that the Barbadians are still of a mindset that they're not willing to go back into an era which we call the colonial era, where they are into the sweatshops arrangement. And if you are going to put manufacturing like the traditional sweatshop, not being able to absorb new technologies into it, and we have to go to a labor-intensive arrangement, that may be a pushback and not necessary, and really an incentive for young people to enter into the field of manufacturing.
So just give us your overall view. Where do you sit with manufacturing? Where does that sit with you right now?
I think manufacturing needs a push. I'm horrified by what we see in the sector. It seems just not to be moving forward. As I earlier referred to numbers of old, I don't know what the current numbers are, but I don't see by my observation a whole lot of activity in the industrial parks of Barbados or industrial sectors. If that's an indication of where we are, then I said we are in a dark hole. We need to find a way to make these businesses, or not, but those persons who were formerly involved or people who have an interest, to get them in there. But we got to accept that we got to do this thing on a plan of what it is that will make us sustainable. There's no point selling a business today that you know that its life is not going to be sustainable. Find it's a business that when we look at having done our research, our market research and so forth, that is viable, and that we can develop markets, not only internal markets, but external markets, and that we can become a competitive force in the international world. That is where we need to go, and that starts with sound planning and a part of our economic policy. Now, I think that we have, some years ago, we were into we had a paper which was done by a professor, Dr. Michael Howard from the University of the West Indies, somewhere back in 1991. And at that time, he looked at industrialization and the whole trade policy. We need to go back there. We need to have a serious look at our industrialization policy. Look, import substitution is a key area which we have to look at. And if we go to start there and determine that, how are we going to adjust the current model that we have to give us a different presence in our own marketplace and to establish us as a player on the international market, then we have to go back to the drawing board. We cannot continue to look in the past. We cannot continue to only speculate and live in hope, but we have to take action. And I think that part of our problem is a lack of action. We are not moving apace with our thinking. We must stop talking and become a people of action.
Final question. Do you know or can you think of a nation or a society that you would model this after if we were to take quick action tomorrow?
Unfortunately, no. I don't like to lock ourselves into saying that we want to be like this body or that body. And the way I'm saying that, every country has its resource base. And you have to know what is your potential. You have to know what it is that you are capable of doing. What you do have is the lessons of other jurisdictions. What you do have is knowledge of the frameworks. You know what the market requirements are. If you have all the same information at your disposal, how do you learn? You learn from what is there. So we have to know what is best for us and how best we can realize our dreams by developing an action plan that fits our own model of development. If you want to do what somebody else is doing to do, ask yourself the question, how did they get there? And somewhere along the line, you will find that there's something that they have in place, maybe from their educational base. Who knows? Because if now we are telling all of our people, oh, we are training you in every job that you apply for must have 3 O levels. I'm not sure that we are encouraging people into a manufacturing sector because we are telling we don't want academics. We are saying we want non-skilled labor. But I mean, you must admit that in manufacturing, there's both skilled and unskilled labor. And they work at varying levels because of different competencies that they're expected to reflect. So, but we have to bear this in as a full package in mind and then work accordingly. So our experts, our management experts, our planners, our industrial experts, all got to come together and understand it, an understanding of how we can build out a sector. It's the same way we look at the service sector. When we look at tourism, we didn't just say hotels. We look at restaurants, we look at the taxis, we look at all of the other recreational facilities. We look at the plan in a comprehensive way as how we would be able to stimulate a new form of new culture within that sphere. The same thing has to go in manufacturing. It's just if you look at construction. We have diversified construction in a different way that now we don't need a steel bend and a man with a come in and mix concrete. We have a lot of technology and we're training people to use the technology and to make sure that we can embrace a wider cross-section of the population. So my simple answer is to you, let us get to the drawing board. Let us get a plan. Let us develop it. Let us look at implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, and then we can say that we are on our way to doing something that meets with our expectation.
Well, let us hope that this segment has lit a fire under somebody to get this stimulated and going. Thank you so much for your time, Dennis Peiza.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And that was General Secretary of CTUSAB, Dennis Peiza. And here's hoping that all that we have learned here today will be a stimulating experience and really light a fire to recharge manufacturing again. We would like to thank the sponsor of this episode, CIBC FirstCaribbean.